Today.
Who knew that being an actor is sometimes even quite painful? Even Johnny probably didn't know all that.
The actors knew. Who else?
And of course, as everywhere and always, it's quite difficult to say funny phrases and be serious at the same time, especially when you have a crowd of people looking at you.
I'll get it this time, I promise.
Set. Action.
You can keep Barbosa. The belligerent homunculus and his...
He messed up
Well,
again.
he's also a good counselor who can turn every bad moment into a good one, or just funny one.
People are what they... Oh,
You can't curse in a Disney film, mate. See, I told him.
We all know that in every movie, the entire cast is a friendly team.
Can't
you can
curse in a
trust,
Disney film.
but not in this case.
Square my debt with Jones. Guarantee my free... What's in there?
Of course, sometimes even the simplest movements are not given to the actors at the first attempt.
And set.
I'm trying to work. So,
Oh, he didn't catch the compass, and he didn't catch whatever that is. Money.
But sometimes it's not the actors
Tea sip.
themselves, but the weather
It's
conditions
too warm for
that
tea.
ruin the scene.
Definitely no tea. Oh, Barbosa lies hat. The window's too powerful. You know what? Jack lost his too. Who needs
Sometimes
hats?
the scene is ruined by forgetfulness, but skillful actors wriggle out of them nicely.
Let us not, dear friend, forget our
Lines.
lines. Let us not forget our lines, shall we?
Honestly, I didn't know how to describe this scene, because there's something weird going on.
That's no Jack Sparrow.
Based on the last scene, he has the strength to scream, but he doesn't seem to have the strength to blow out the candle. Sometimes even the actor who has the script doesn't understand what's going on in a certain scene, like here.
Want to touch?
Aubrey, not
What?
if you have your hand. I'm sorry. This
Or like this example here.
Go away! I don't speak Spanish! Try again!
And that's what happens when you take non-trained
Try
movie
again.
animals that will go along with your every word.
No, we're going out of shot. Come. Okay, don't come. See if I care.
Try and tell the horse we're going out of shot.
Him. Hmm? I love you. You have traveled, but...
But to hold back laughter when the lead actor gets very serious is impossible to learn.
Do we having a cool?
Who knew that jokes in movies sometimes go on long enough to be funny just because of the stupidity of the joke?
Sometimes it's the funny jokes that make the final cut.
Sex always marks the spot.
That aren't even scripted, and they're the best ones.
You know what I mean. It's an old saying.
But sometimes you can use jokes to your advantage, like Johnny did here.
I hit the ceiling. I caught the ceiling. Nine. Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
A couple of times you don't even realize what the
Now
actors
Jack
are
Sparrow
doing.
is
Either they're warming
German
up their
Jack
speech
Sparrow.
apparatus or just making weird noises.
And I want you to, and I'd like to try it all again. I really would. I'm a little bit late. I'm so done.
Let's do one more. And Mark.
Strange sounds is certainly interesting, but what's more interesting is how the scenes with the actors punching are filmed.
3, 2, 1.
Help me.
Help her, Lee.
And they're caught.
But as we've said before, untrained animals sometimes ruin a very important scene, but it makes the whole cast cheerful.
Today is the night. Oh, thank you.
Also, an unplanned failed shot can lift the mood.
He's stuck, isn't he? Yep.
Dead. That's me. I won't be in 6.
Okay, we're gonna continue this one as well. Ultimate
Yo,
behind the scenes.
welcome to A Pirate's Life. Nobody expected Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl to be as big of a hit as it was. The film led to 4 highly successful sequels. Johnny Depp became one of the biggest stars in Hollywood playing Jack Sparrow, and revitalized the modern-day blockbuster. Today, we're setting sail and finding out what exactly went into making the Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl.
So I'd be having that dress back before you go.
The scene which finds Keira Knightley's Elizabeth Swann walking the plank,
plank.
took 2 days to film. Knightley recalls being terrified, but when the crew told her
2
they used a
days?
stunt double for when her character jumps off the plank, she responded by saying,
I've been standing up here for 2 days. Do you really think that I'm not going to jump off this thing?
Among one of the many reasons why Johnny Depp was cast in the role of Captain Jack Sparrow was that the studio felt that he already had the vibe of a modern-day pirate. In order to retain a look that was still in touch with the film setting, the makeup artist had to get creative when covering Depp's personal tattoos. So they used soot smears and costumes to cover several of his tattoos, and would proceed to add new pirate-themed ones. Depp did keep one of his pirate tattoos, which was Jack Sparrow's own name, which Depp kept to both honor the character as well as his son, who was born the year before the release of the film.
Did not know that.
Code is more what you call guidelines than actual rules. Welcome aboard the Black Pearl.
Geoffrey Rush was so committed to mastering the art of sword fighting that the crew became sick of dealing with him. Depp was also committed to the craft and developed Jack Sparrow's flamboyant fighting style, which was inspired by the famous Muhammad Ali. His method involved keeping his arms down and letting his opponent come to him.
Bootstrap.
Several contact lenses were made to help show off Mackenzie Crook's Ragetti's wooden eye, with a hard lens used to make his eye bulge even more. Lee Arnenberg's Pintel also had contact lenses that were used to make his eyes look extremely yellow. Geoffrey Rush had contact lenses that made his eye colors less bright and more dull, so he'd appear more sickly as Barbossa. Even Johnny Depp had contact lenses that doubled as sunglasses that would help him not squint during long days of filming in the sun.
Hey, it's clean. It's not supposed to be clean.
The Curse of the Black Pearl already had quite the elaborate wardrobe and prop department. The process of casting Jack Sparrow's fellow pirate and prisoner extras was definitely a unique process. The process involved bringing in around 600 bikers and out-of-work actors into a basement at Disney and giving them real weapons to work with.
Jeez.
After people started getting hurt, they switched to rubber ones. On top of that, there were 900 wardrobe pieces in total. The clothes from the film initially arrived clean and put together. It wasn't actually until the costume design team had to work hard to make the clothes appear far dirtier than they originally were.
The cave set is
Imagine
one of
getting the
largest
clothes
sets
for a
built on
scene
stage in
dry cleaned,
Hollywood.
and then you have to wash them,
One
or you
of
have
the
to make them
film's
dirty
biggest and most
for a pirate
extravagant
scene.
sets is the treasure cave in the film's third act. This set alone took well over 5 months to build, with 100 craftsmen working to make the set look as good as possible.
I almost have a dot to dot. See those dots right on the curve.
Nearly 50 makeup artists worked on the film, often teaming with some of the hairstylists. The film's makeup process of grunging up each actor was also a different process that required the team to apply the makeup and prosthetics in layers, and was stippled on each cast member with a brush instead of a sponge. There were days on set where up to 30 or 40 hairdressers would work on the film's large ensemble of principal actors as well as the extras. The hairdressers would have to work on every single cast member, from the townsfolk to the British Guard to, of course, the pirates themselves. It was like an assembly line process, with all
Have
the
I heard
cast having to take a
Gravity
seat that was
Falls maybe
okay
getting a
in either
season
the makeup corner or the
in
hairstylist
2026?
corner.
Yeah, I did hear that.
That's a gamble of long odds, ain't it? There's never a guarantee of coming back.
Obviously, a pirate really isn't a pirate without rotting teeth. The teeth were mainly just colors, which meant that the makeup crew never had to worry about touching up or continuously checking on the actor's teeth.
I'd say the most difficult thing was just remembering all of the moves
in terms of the sword fights.
No pirate movie is complete without some badass
I hope it's
sword
a season.
fights. The cast of Curse of the Black Pearl needed to learn how to sword fight
season 4?
in order for the fight scenes to
Maybe.
look as
Honestly,
stylized
don't know.
and authentic as possible. The cast was taught by Hollywood legend Bob Anderson. The military fort that Knightley's swan faints off of in the film was an actual practical set that was built on location in Palos Verdes, California. Though, the shot that shows her fainting and making her impact into the ocean was shot in the Caribbean, where a majority of the filming took place.
Well, thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
Not you, we named the monkey Jack.
The scene where Joffrey rushes
The monkey
Captain
Jack.
Barbossa reveals to Jack Sparrow that his pet monkey is also named Jack, with the monkey shooting a mawkish smile that was completely coincidental. The monkey's smile wasn't actually planned, but performed the action at just the right time to make for the memorable shot. The very first shot of the film that features a pirate ship coming out of the fog wasn't actually just one shot, like it appeared to be. In fact, the opening shot was really 5 shots stitched together to look like it was one take. On top of that, despite this being one of the very first scenes the crew shot, it wasn't finished until 2 days before the film had its world premiere at Disneyland.
Jeez.
Captain Jack Sparrow, if you please, sir.
Well, I don't see your ship, Captain.
While most of the film's ships were built from scratch, the HMS Interceptor wasn't. Instead, a real ship named Lady Washington was used for the boat. The crew had to repaint the entire ship, having to manually cut out ports for the cannons and even change the stern, among other things. In order to design the pirates' walking corpses, the crew used turkey jerky as an influence to design the rotting flesh. To make the zombie pirates distinguishable from each other, the designers decided to keep the actual eyes of each pirate extra.
If it works, it works.
Without doubt the worst pirate I have ever seen.
The pirate genre had been dormant for many years after the swashbuckling film Cutthroat Island turned out to be a box office flop. Writers Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio had been wanting to make a pirate-themed movie with a supernatural twist since the early 90s and decided to pitch it to Disney. The Mouse House was certainly hesitant at first, but decided to make the script into an adaptation of their popular theme park ride, Pirates of the Caribbean. Steven Spielberg was at one point attached to direct the film before Gore Verbinski. A year prior to the release, another film based on a Disney theme park attraction was released, in the form of The Country Bears. The film was an
More like the
unmitigated
Cursed
critical
Bears.
and financial disaster. So much so that Disney head Michael Eisner feared that the concept of a film based on a theme park ride would no longer work. Eisner tried to shut down the film, but Verbinski told his team to continue to work on the film. After Eisner was shown concept art for the film, he ultimately decided to let Verbinski move forward with the film.
You are without doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
But you have heard of me.
Before Johnny Depp was cast in the iconic role of Jack Sparrow, the creative team actually had other actors in mind. The role was actually written with Hugh Jackman in mind. Matthew McConaughey, Robert De Niro, Jim Carrey, Christopher Walken, and Cary Elwes were also looked at to possibly take on the role of the famed pirate. Eisner was initially not a fan of Depp's portrayal of Jack Sparrow, and was most confused about the character's personality. Eisner was so pessimistic that he thought Depp's eccentric performance would sink the whole movie because audiences wouldn't be able to get behind the character. This prediction turned out to be far from the truth, as Depp was so universally praised for his performance that he even earned an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. Much like the casting of Jack Sparrow, there were plenty of actors in consideration for the role of Will Turner, with it finally being narrowed down between Ledger and Orlando Bloom. Ultimately, the team went with Bloom.
I saved your life, you saved mine. We're square.
Depp claims that the look, mannerisms, and partying lifestyle of Captain Jack Sparrow were inspired by Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards. Depp said that the main reason he chose Richards was because he saw pirates as the rock stars of their day, and felt that Richards perfectly captured that aura. Keira Knightley was coming off the indie hit Bend It Like Beckham when she did the very first Pirates movie. In fact, she was only 17 years old at the time of filming, 9 years younger than her love interest Orlando Bloom. Because of her young age, Knightley's mother had to accompany her throughout the entire shoot. Knightley even packed light, fearing that she would be fired early into the shoot.
And then got offered it, and here I am. And I kind of thought every single day that I was going to be fired.
Much of the film was shot on location in the Caribbean, which led to the cast and crew making their way to set each day by boat. After one night of shooting on one of the main islands, a boat that was carrying Keira Knightley and her mother hit a reef and sank. While no one on board was injured, the mother and daughter were stuck waiting for several hours before they were eventually rescued. From then on, night shoots were instead filmed indoors in a studio.
Given the fact that I'm, playing a man who has a beard that can play the organ.
Pulling off the iconic monstrosity that is Davy Jones required an equally unique approach to the visual effects. Industrial Light and Magic's John Knoll and his crew invented an entirely new process for doing motion capture, which allowed actor Bill Nighy to perform the role on set with the rest of the cast, instead of by himself on an empty blue screen soundstage. Knoll and his team were then able to build Davy Jones and his tentacles completely off of Nighy's spectacular performance, with all his little quirks included.
And yet not so fortunate as to find land.
The terrifying Kraken wasn't initially
It looks so
very scary
weird
for
when
the
it's not
actors on the set,
actually
probably
him.
because director Gore Verbinski was standing in for it.
He's like, be afraid, I'm a tentacle, and you go, ah.
But eventually, the legendary sea monster was brought to life through a mix of both practical and visual effects. In the scene where the Kraken crushes the ship, the crew used a combination of explosives and 2 huge pipes filled with 30,000 pounds of cement to pull off the actual crushing, and afterward replace them with the CG tentacles in the final cut.
And I don't think it's Kraken anyways. Always heard it said Kraken.
Making a movie in the Caribbean is a bit tougher than you might think. The entire crew had to get all their shots in order to travel to the tropical film location.
I hate shots, I really do. I don't like needles.
The production filmed in St. Vincent, the Exumas, the Grand Bahamas, and the tiny island of Dominica, where they dealt with torrential downpours and extreme heat and humidity. They also happened to be shooting during one of the biggest hurricane seasons on record. Choppy waters forced them to shut down countless times, and at one point, the entire production had to evacuate in order to avoid Hurricane Wilma.
I can't help it if your standards are lax.
You smell funny.
Jack.
A lot goes into the look of a character as interesting as Jack Sparrow. Jack's gold teeth were bonded onto Johnny Depp's real ones by a dentist before filming began. However, some of the gold teeth in the back are actually real replacements.
A couple of these are mine. These ones towards the back belong to me.
Depp got the idea of having different things in his hair from Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards, who was a huge inspiration for the character. Another notable accessory, Sparrow's striped sash from the first movie, had actually been lost. So the wardrobe department tracked down the mountain villagers in Turkey who wove the original and had them churn out another 100 yards of the sash.
Jeez.
If you think Jack's normal look is wild, wait till you see his getup as the god of a cannibal tribe. Sparrow's clever face paint design was an idea that Gore Verbinski and the makeup team came up with on the day of the scene. However, the toe necklace was Depp's idea, and was molded and sculpted from spare materials on set. Sparrow's fluffy scepter was actually a prop that was brought to set by a visiting friend of Depp's, who ended up making 2 more for the production.
You do know Will taught me how to handle a sword.
Having missed out on sword fights in the first film, Keira Knightley made up for it by getting all the sword fights she could handle in Dead Man's Chest. Knightley took to
She's
the
now
sword very
on
quickly,
1.
never failing to get the choreography
Jeez,
on the first
that
jump.
loud.
Not only did she pretty much do all Elizabeth's sword fights herself, she also outdid her fellow castmates, and even earned the respect of the stunt team.
It's crazy.
Easily one of the more creative sword fights ever filmed, the 3-way duel started on the Disney lot, where the stunt team worked out the choreography in a metal wheel, fashioned with hidden handles and handrails. On set, the wheel was rigged to a truck and pulled through the jungle with the actors harnessed inside. As awesome as it looked, the actors did not recommend the experience.
Of course not.
I wouldn't really try that at home.
When it came time for
Why would you want to
Jack
try that at
Sparrow's
home?
showdown
Maybe
with the
once,
Kraken,
but
some elements
not
were a
5,
little
6,
more
7
real than
times.
others. Specifically, the monsters, spit. The spit in question was made of concentrated saline and blown out of a bucket by an industrial-sized fan onto poor Mr. Depp. After it had been tested on his stand-in, of course. You can safely assume it wasn't Depp's favorite gag.
Of course not.
Living in it. Wrong. Altogether wrong.
If there was ever a scene that could out-weird a three-way sword fight in a rolling wheel, the bone cage sequence might have pulled it off. In order to get some authentic performances, the actors were strapped in and literally rolled down a hill, swung from a crane, and at one point, Gore Verbinski had them carry the cage and run with it themselves.
This is the last day in Dominica, and Gore's just trying to punish us. That's what it is.
The actors may have had a rough day, but the dummies had it even worse.
And then rolling. Oh boy.
When it
They
comes to
actually
filming
had them
locations for
run
pirates,
with that.
the more
That's crazy.
obscure, the better. Verbinski and cinematographer Dariusz Wolski found Tita Gorge while looking through a Dominica tourist brochure and thought it would be the perfect spot to end the bone cage chase. Actors and crew filmed while in freezing cold water that was several feet deep, and they had to literally swim to location, including the 67-year-old actor who played Cotton, David Bailey. The pirate life isn't easy, huh?
Funny way to get to the office, huh?
Who'd have guessed that the open ocean would be so hard to shoot on? Well, the crew had particular trouble getting boats to stay in place, so Gore Verbinski could get the shots he wanted.
You know, right when you line it up, everything moves.
We're going to the fishing boat.
Constantly in flux.
With 4 background boats and numerous floating light rigs to keep in place in moving water, it was a big challenge to get everything in frame. One shoot night went 17 hours without getting a single take.
This again went to another level of filmmaking.
For the filming of the sword fight on a tiny little sandbar in the middle of the ocean, all the crew and equipment still needed to be nearby. That meant putting the entire production on a barge, with a 20-minute boat ride to and from set. It was no cakewalk for the actors either. The sand there was super wet thanks to the tide, making it very difficult to run and fight across the beach for take after take after take.
There's no one there.
Johnny Depp stayed in character even when he flubbed his lines. And much like Jack Sparrow, Depp was the source of numerous comical moments on set. At one point, he even forgot the name of the notorious Davy Jones's ship.
Crocodile machine or whatever it's called. What's the bloody thing called? Flying what? Dutchman.
But he was also very
Forgot the
helpful to his
name of the
fellow
Flying
cast.
Dutchman.
Seems like it's always a good time when Jack Sparrow's around.
Sorry.
When it comes to a crew the size of a small army, you can never have enough snacks. Actor Jack Davenport, who played the Commodore James Norrington, was a bit surprised to learn just how much of the budget was going to the munchies. I remember saying to craft services chef one day, "What is your budget for all this?" He looked me square in the eye and said, "Essentially unlimited." I was like, "What does that mean?" He was like, "I don't know, 2 million?" I was like, "For snacks?" And he was like, "Yeah, safe to say,
2 million
no one
for
went
snacks.
hungry on this
Holy
production."
shit.
Time to feed.
When The Curse of the Black Pearl was made, there were no plans for any sequels. So while filming for her next movie, Domino, Keira Knightley chopped off her actual hair for the part, assuming she wouldn't be reprising Elizabeth Swann. But when the sequels were announced, Knightley had nothing for the Pirates' hair and makeup team to work with. So in Dead Man's Chest, Miss Swann's long locks are in fact hair extensions.
This
is the Super Bowl of the motion picture business right here.
The gigantic ending battle between the Black Pearl and Dutchman is one of the biggest set pieces in movie history.
Cool.
They filmed the sequence in a military hangar, where they constructed a massive set. It required 920 feet of blue screen, which is one of the biggest in film history, electrical cables that stretched over 8 stories tall, massive ships on gimbal systems to rotate them, and a water system to simulate rain. The pure mass of this set is hard to comprehend, and all of this was designed and built in just 3 months. The visual effects side of this battle was a massive undertaking of its own, as the sequence had over 320 VFX shots, which made up 1/3 of all visual effects shots for the movie.
That's crazy.
Massive amount of computing time. I mean, it was just mind-blowing.
The entirety of the climactic fight between the Black Pearl and Dutchman takes place in the rain, which meant the actors were constantly getting soaked.
Have you noticed? On top of everything, it's raining. That's a bad sign.
The set had a massive rain system that dumped water at 50,000 gallons a minute. Captain Barbossa actor Jeffrey Rush said when his costume got wet, he weighed 45 pounds more.
Jesus.
The last 10 weeks shooting of the movie, they had nothing left to shoot that wasn't in torrential rain. For 10 weeks.
Orlando Bloom stated that there were some days of shooting where they would be wet the entire day. It doesn't look too comfortable behind the scenes, but it looks fantastic on screen.
How wet could it be?
Speaking of being soaked, apparently that's just par for the course when you work on a movie about sailing the high seas. For the sequence when the Black Pearl is flipped over, the actors actually filmed that scene underwater. They would all synchronize a breath hold, and then go under and hold onto a rail for as long as they could until they needed air. They even filmed Rigetti and Pintel tied to the mast underwater, which was a little nerve-wracking for the actors. Not to worry though, they had tons of water safety experts on set, just in case of an emergency.
It doesn't really feel like a good idea to tie people up to a mast underwater.
The guys that were
dramatic and beautiful scene
roped
where
tight
the
to the
Endeavour
center of the
ship gets
ship
torn to shreds with Beckett still
when it
on
went
it
upside down.
is more practical
They
than
were
you
actually in the
probably
water.
think. All the actors, including Beckett, were filmed separately from the exploding ship. They had a crew member counting on set.
And
so all
you
the
know when
actors could
Barbossa
hit
and all
their
them went
marks at the
underwater?
proper time.
They all went underwater at the same time to sync their
They
oxygen
then
levels
shot the same
to get it right.
sequence, but this time with no actors. They used pyrotechnics and shot debris out of cannons to simulate the ship blowing apart. Motion-controlled cameras were used for both takes, so the shots could then be easily composited together for a seamless sequence of beautiful destruction.
Which it was.
Here, boy. A lost bug.
If you thought Davy Jones sword fighting with Jack Sparrow on a high beam up in the air was fake, you'd be half right. The fight was shot practically, with Johnny Depp and a Davy Jones stunt double performing the fight on a small piece of the set. The long swooping shot following this fight starts off 100% CGI, including Johnny Depp, then transitions into the real Johnny Depp and stunt double performance. It's a perfect example of practical elements and CG working together.
Cool.
Step lively! With a will! Run away, sir.
How do you create a scene with multiple Jack Sparrows? You have Johnny Depp do the same scene over and over and over as different versions of himself. Depp had to rehearse the scene character by character, applying small nuances to each version.
It was a great challenge, you know.
He and director Gore Verbinski came up with the individual
Yeah, Jack had to record every
They used
Jack.
a motion-controlled camera for each take, repeating the sequence for as
Where
many
he's in the
Jacks were
locker.
in the shot. They then overlaid the takes in camera to give Depp and the crew an idea of what it would look like.
You see it's working. That juices you up, you know.
In another multi-Jack sequence, we see mini Jack Sparrows on Johnny Depp's shoulders, interacting with his hair. For this, they built giant dreadlocks that Johnny Depp did the scene with. They had one dread that was suspended in the air, with Depp hanging onto it. We love that they decided to do this practically, as the visual of Johnny Depp standing in giant dreads is worth it alone.
I wash my hands of this weirdness.
How do they make the ships in the movie look so real? Simple. They build them for real. Well, simpler said than done. Davy Jones's ship, the Dutchman, was completely built from scratch and was a real sailboat with no motors. It was inspired by late 17th century design and fittingly based on a Dutch flute design. The design team used a urethane casting, a rubber-like substance, to give the wood an aged look. On top of this, all the sculptures on the ship were created by hand by their team of artists.
There's so many man-hours involved in this.
A combination of live-action ships, CGI, and miniatures were used to bring all the ships you see on screen to life. The scene where the Black Pearl and Dutchman surround the Endeavour is a perfect example of this technique. The Black Pearl was a real full-size ship with some digital enhancements. Two regular boats filled in for the other ships, and the wide shot of the Endeavour exploding was a miniature being blown up. ILM VFX supervisor John Knoll stated the importance of capturing a sequence in camera first.
My goal is to always start from some live action, so we've got some grounding in reality that we can build from.
The vast nothingness of Davy Jones's locker is actually a real-life location. They shot the scene at the Bonneville Salt Flats of Utah. The director loved the look of it and the vastness of the landscape. It rained a couple days before shooting, which almost ruined everything. But luckily, it dried up enough to film. The full-size Blonde Girl wasn't there, and was instead Johnny Depp interacting with small parts of the ship. One scene they shot here included a blooper of Johnny Depp hitting the ground pretty hard.
Our intentions are strictly honorable.
The opening sequence of the film sees Captain Barbossa and Elizabeth Swann visiting Captain Fang's dwelling
catching
to ask for
swords
assistance. When
like
things go south,
10
our main
times.
characters have swords thrown to them through the floorboards. Jeffrey Rush and Keira Knightley had difficulties catching said swords. The actors throwing them had some troubles as well. After a handful of mistakes, they finally got a clean take. Did you know that when this movie was made in 2007, it was the most expensive movie ever made, costing $300 million?
That's a lot of money.
14 years later, it is still one of the most expensive films ever made, only coming in behind Avengers Infinity War, Endgame, Age of Ultron, and fittingly, one of its sequels on Stranger Tides. After everything we've learned though, we understand why it costs so much.
Shall we just call it square then?
Another delightfully practical set piece came when the crew rocks the Black Pearl to capsize the ship. The actors filmed the scene on a rotating ship deck. They actually ran against the tipping of the boat, catching and holding onto the railing. For the wide shots of the boat actually flipping over, a 24-foot-long miniature was used.
I call on Captain Teague, keeper of the code.
Jack Sparrow's character and look was influenced by rock legend Keith Richards, who appears in At World's End as Jack's father. Costume designer Penny Rose wanted his character's costume to be more elaborate and aristocratic than Jack Sparrow's more rough and weathered outfit. They had trouble getting enough materials to make multiples of the costume, but eventually were able to secure the necessary supplies and give the character a unique style.
It's not just about living forever, Jackie.
Calypso turning into hundreds of crabs is obviously a CGI effect, but would you have guessed that they actually filmed practical elements of this scene for the VFX team to work with? The crew used blue clay balls to fill in for the crabs, and dropped 3 large nets filled with them onto the deck of the Black Pearl. It only took about 5 seconds for all the balls to drop, but we're sure the cleanup took much longer.
You know, you're ruining the pirate
Some
team.
of the greatest actors in the world is terribly exciting.
Director Rob Marshall preferred shooting on location as much as possible, and this decision almost cost him his life. While shooting in the jungles of Hawaii, Marshall got a real taste of the mercilessness of the wild. Mid-conversation with Johnny Depp and Penelope Cruz, he slipped while standing on a cliff. Thanks to his quick reflexes, he managed to grab a vine just before taking a dive. This didn't deter him though, as he believes you are having an adventure while you are making one. The team agreed it was better to recreate the set in studio, not just because of this, but because of the dangers presented by the surf. Actress Penelope Cruz was pregnant during the filming.
There she was, fencing and fighting and amazing, and pregnancy.
She had 2 months of training leading up to filming, but ultimately couldn't do everything. She had to make choices for the safety of her and her future child, and so her sister Monica was brought in to be her double for some of the scenes. Monica is an actress and dancer in Spain and is very good with swords, a perfect choice to fill in for some of the fight scenes, but also to hide that baby bump.
And then I did a lot of it, but I always safe, nothing dangerous.
One of the many reasons On Stranger Tides was so expensive to film comes down to the props that were designed for the movie. More than a dozen washed-up mermaids, each in different stages of decay, were created over the course of 7 weeks. One incredibly detailed mermaid was cast out of silicone to give it a whale blubbery texture for when Barbossa kicks it.
Mermaid, give up this madness now.
It's kind of a tragedy how much of it is covered with sand in the film, because the detail in the design is absolutely incredible.
Did everyone see that? Because I will not be doing it again.
Pirates of the Caribbean On Stranger Tides is the most expensive movie ever made, holding the record even 10 years later. With a budget of roughly $379 million, it came in at well over $400 million. That makes it more expensive than the Avengers films and Avatar. Johnny Depp is one of the reasons for the expensive budget. He made a whopping $55 million for the film and admits he was overpaid.
Too much.
But says he's keeping the money because it isn't for him, it's for his kids. Movies filmed at sea are often the most expensive, which is why all of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies cost so much.
We had beautiful actresses playing the mermaids.
Mermaids were a huge part of On Stranger Tides, and director Rob Marshall was very specific about how he wanted them to look. While Disney gave the team the go-ahead to make them look super scary, Marshall decided to dial that back and still keep the beautiful qualities about the actresses. The team designed the ships to look like they did when they were first captured. Stormy CG water, special lighting, lightning, and more was added to make the bottle containing the Black Pearl look as if it had been captured in a storm. The team even went so far as to include a shot of Jack the Monkey. While one of the shots was the real Capuchin, other shots were just CG.
Let's take everybody up, thank you. And pull!
Filming a movie about pirates, you're going to run into a lot of mishaps with swords. Our favorite being between Kevin McNally and Johnny Depp.
Sorry, my sword nearly went up Johnny's nose.
Which wouldn't be good.
While it sounds innocent enough, these mistakes can often be quite dangerous. But luckily, no one was hurt and we got great bloopers. Like Depp, trying again, and again, and again to take Cruise's hat off with his sword.
I think this takes going well, don't you?
In order for Penelope Cruz to do such a perfect imitation of Depp's character, the whole thing was staged like dance choreography. To keep her identity a secret involved an intricate costume, carefully planned shots, low lighting, and a ton of CG. While the two of them battle it out on the rafters, they're strung up in complicated
Why are you saying,
rigs.
oh no?
To remove all the wires, the editors replaced the roof in CG and created the CG barrels you can see in the background. Many girls dream of being a mermaid, and the women casted to play them in On Stranger Tides were thrilled to be there.
Being evil, an evil mermaid, but it's gonna be awesome.
Actual Olympic athletes were hired for some of the sequences, while actors took on the speaking parts, and the stunt doubles took on some of the more dangerous work.
There'll be mermaids upon us within the hour, you mark my words.
Animals have to go through months of training to perform simple tasks, but training is always fun when there's food around. For Chiquita the monkey, a lot of time, grapes, bananas, and pudding goes into training, while the pig's goal was simple: to escape the clutches of Kevin McNally in a game of tug-of-war.
Pigs, eh? Never work with them.
Teaching an animal to escape sounds like a pretty backwards pet trick to us.
It's 160 pounds of very low, good traction.
The scene where Queen Anne's Revenge is chasing the mermaids is pretty much all done with CG. The ship, the fire, the water, and the mermaids are not real. That leaves us wondering, what is? Funny enough, Queen Anne's Revenge is the first ship in the series that's based on an actual pirate ship. So at least we know one thing is real. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Unless, of course, you're Captain Jack Sparrow. An incredibly complicated sequence is played out in the film when Jack goes after a cream puff that gets stuck to a chandelier. Unfortunately for Johnny Depp, it's just CG. The chandelier, however, was real and was controlled by giant pulleys and motors that had to support the weight of Depp. The sequence where Queen Anne's Revenge comes to life and fights back against the crew had incredibly intricate choreography in place.
My favorite part of the day, hanging on a line for hours.
A lot had to come together in order for this scene to work, from pyrotechnics to sword fights, and half the cast fighting back against magical ropes, some of which were CGI. It made for quite the shot. Filming in the port of Los Angeles on the HMS Providence was an exciting adventure for the cast and crew, because it was actually fully functional as a ship and required a sailing crew. A fully CG version of the ship was also designed for when the mermaids tear it apart. What we're wondering is how much of the cast got seasick while filming on the ship.
Today,
Probably a
we are
lot.
filming Pirates of the Caribbean. Dead men tell no tales. Follow me.
Hi, is your bank running? Well, you better go catch it.
3, 2, 1, action!
That was not part of the plan.
What fun is CGI when you've got a team that can put together a production like this? We've got a tractor at the core of that bank, which was built by the art department, and of course, this stampede of horses. Oh yeah, that bank tractor driver? Couldn't see where he was going. Coordination within all the departments was key here. Did we mention this was at the top of filming? Off to the races we go. Everybody clear? 'Cause the wall is coming down.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, we were serious. Not a shortcut was taken to pull off stunts of this magnitude. These sets managed to cause chaos in more ways than one, though. Help me.
Help her, Lee.
Step aside, baby shark. It's time for ghost sharks.
How broken you can make something look and still keep it threatening.
We've never really thought about it, but the Pirates team was hard at work building fully realized versions of the sharks, and then going in digitally to really ghostify them. We're talking broken jaws, flies, slime.
Everything you can think
sharks
of.
to look really menacing.
Nasty.
Now, if we were to run into these in the wild, we'd definitely run the other way. So, mission accomplished, team.
Chuck.
Hey, Salazar, need some moisturizer?
They look like they'd been blown up.
The idea of cracked Earth quickly inspired Salazar and his crew's look. One that meant a whole lot of time was being spent in the makeup chair.
This is all prosthetics.
We're talking 3.5 hours every single time.
It took me a little while to adjust to the time frame.
Patience was key, though not everyone had the full treatment done.
This is all done with stencils and transfers.
There aren't enough hours in a day to do it all. How much of his head is missing exactly? And is he okay?
They were bringing this idea of the face with a hole in it, which it was hard for me to imagine.
While he did have incredible prosthetics, the Salazar actor still got the CGI treatment to make so much of his skull go bye-bye. It was either cracked Earth makeup or blue for Javier, perfect for achieving that, let's call it a ghostly aesthetic. New director, new DOP, new cast members?
And it's been a very rewarding one.
Change can be tough, but bringing in new directors was welcomed with open arms.
Directors are very young and very energetic. They move the camera a lot. They use a lot of drones.
Bringing in a new perspective for the 5th film in the franchise turned out to be a pretty special experience. They managed to brilliantly keep within the pirate genre while bringing a bit of a different look to the screen.
I felt it was like a surreal moment every day on this shoot.
Is that dirt or makeup? Or both?
Probably
Becoming
both.
Gibbs was a far from glamorous process.
Tan, sunburn,
And then
muck, and rubbish.
dirt.
But it was definitely creative. Since he had to get a kind of grimy, dirty look, why waste fancy makeup when you can go with the best source of all?
We get a little mud from the car park and we rub it in like that, see?
And even that could be too fancy at times.
And we're rationing the mud from the car park this morning. Get me some more mud from the car park.
Something looks different. But the same? He really isn't Gibbs without the signature mutton chops, which happened to have been grown by Kevin McNally himself for the first 4 movies, but for Dead Men Tell No Tales.
Didn't have time to grow them this time.
The best part about prosthetic mutton chops? They didn't have as much gray hair as McNally really does. Is gunk ever really convenient? The Salazar actor was initially told the gunk he was going to use would taste like chocolate, but the reality wasn't so sweet. Javier dove right in, though. They were supposed to put it on the teeth. I said, give me that, so I drunk it. But then it all came pouring out of his mouth again. Disgust was a real strong vibe that day. Better watch out where you're going, or you'll land somewhere you shouldn't.
That was not comfortable at all.
It was early days in the filming process, and one of this pair's first scenes together. And Kaya made a bit of a misstep. The director thought it would be funny to have her step on her co-star's crotch. But not for real, of course. Unfortunately, they missed the mark on this one.
And I accidentally stood on your crotch. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
And a final sprint to the finish line.
It had been such a tough shoot and so long and everyone was so tired.
No better way to wrap up than shooting with high stakes.
We had a scene where we could only do it once.
This scene turned out to be one of the best ways to finish the experience, in a setting that was more like a family vacation than a movie set. It's a good thing everything went off without a hitch, since that beach couldn't be reset so easily after the cast ran through.
Like we're running towards the finish line.
They didn't have to be in the sea to be underwater.
We have a sequence under the sea.
Yes, in around 2 or 3 months, the crew built this incredible environment on dry land.
We were tasked with the job of trying to create an underwater environment.
Every single detail we see was built from scratch, from the coral to the creatures to the sea floor.
A lot of coral, a lot of texture, and very, very wet.
Having such a detailed and rich environment made it very easy for the actors to feel like they really were underwater. Are we underwater, or is it just special effects?
2 weeks of that.
Probably special effects.
Cuckoo, but it looks good in the movie.
Yeah, no kidding. We'd be asking that if we saw lights and shadows that so convincingly made it feel like we were in the bottom of the sea too.
We ended up with a very simple system of just old-fashioned water trays.
A giant lighting rig and small pools of water that were hung up along the ceiling and connected with other lights that could be manipulated while shooting made all of this possible. Who needs CG when you've got blinking lights and perfectly rippled water? Number 14. Land Ho. Not just yet, though. There is some pirate business to take care of. Of course, there were many days on set spent in the water, both on huge rigs and smaller dinghies, many of which were made just for the movie, by the way.
Once you get into the pirates world, anything can happen.
The view is bliss, but getting changed out at sea is hardly comfortable. A price worth paying, though, for a movie like this. Sometimes it's easy as walking. It looks epic to film, but take after take of continuously being wet in mocap suits no less, well, it doesn't make for the easiest day on set. Walking in this case, not so chill. But of course, the Pirates team makes it work. Surprisingly, there were no yellow submarines on set. Enough said.
He's one of the greatest musicians, songwriters, performers.
Paul McCartney happens to be a close pal of Johnny Depp's and came on board as a favor, even though he was surprised to be asked at all. By the looks of Depp's delighted face, McCartney delivered.
Oh, Maggie, Maggie May, they have taken her away. Yeah, I'm loving it.
They look good, but they are far from practical. Kaya Scodelario was whipping out stunts on set all while wearing 17 layers, including a tight corset. I'm very much a jeans and t-shirt girl, so I was quite nervous about all of that. There were also plenty of heels on set, but not just for the women. Take note Brenton Thwaites was sporting them in not-so-ideal conditions. I found the high heels on the boats to be pretty challenging. Toss those heels overboard! Sorry, we're here for the Pirates of the Caribbean content. Whoa, yep, this is it. No solo acoustic guitar tracks here. Dead Men Tell No Tales went all out, recording the orchestrations and incidental music live for the film. It really does take a village, and this one can certainly play. Listen to that string section. And next up, we'll be serenaded by Jack Sparrow himself. When he wasn't busy Jack Sparrowing, Johnny Depp could be found tucked away spending some quality time with his guitar.
It's nice to see that kind
We're just reacting to some behind the scenes.
This team was set for tunes. How many ships does it take to make a Pirates of the Caribbean movie? For Dead Men Tell No Tales, there were a whopping
of Pirates of the Caribbean,
built, including one that measured a massive 160 feet long. And these were no basic boats.
You see every detail, tiny detail of the construction of the set is so well taken care of.
Period speak is tricky business. Kevin McNally has been doing the Pirates gig from the very beginning, and if something didn't sound right, he was gonna know it. His accurate ear came in very handy for Kaya as she was still learning the ropes.
We were discussing in line, I think I say okay, and he pulled it up and he said, nope, that is not historically accurate.
Sticklers for detail make Pirates of the Caribbean the legendary franchise it is. Some takes may have been ruined, but it doesn't mean they weren't fun. When takes went sour, it wasn't necessarily because an actor messed up. In this case, it's because this pirate was a bit too good at his job.
Well, actually, he didn't. The actors around him did. Like myself.
At least they all got a good laugh. Number 23.
Oh my god, it's still
going. No
going.
matter which costume it was, you can be sure it was detailed to the max.
There's so many behind the scenes.
There's a clean version, and then this one is what we call the ghosted version.
From the fine silver embroidery
that makes sense. There's a lot of costume change though.
The character in this costume speaks volumes. Number 24. The production schedule got thrown for a loop because the one and only Jack Sparrow was so often late. It was such a problem that the team actually had a production assistant literally.
I imagine it would be hard to keep a straight face with someone like Jack Sparrow in your face. Yeah, a lot of laughing and like trying so hard not to just burst out.
Where so much magic happened. Working on Whitsunday Islands is
especially when he's like right up in your face
sacred lands.
For a
Before
scene.
the crew began filming, representatives from the Ungaro people performed a traditional smoking ceremony to bring good spirits to the team and production.
Oh, okay. It's just over, just like that.